In the AWS Developers Podcast, we're talking about promptz.dev. If I have to summarize it in one phrase, but we are going to detail later, it's a GitHub for prompt for Amazon Q developers. Stay tuned, we explain all that in a minute. Good morning, and thank you for downloading the AWS Developers Podcast every Friday morning in all good podcast application. Today we're going to talk about Q Developer, that AI assistant for developer that sits on the command line or in your IDE. Using an AI assistant require prompting it, be able to craft the good question, the good prompt. It's becoming an art now. And to facilitate the task of developers prompting Q and AI system in general, Christian Bonzolet, you developed promptz.dev. So Christian, thank you for being here. You're solution architect at the Bundesliga. You're also AWS community builder. Bundesliga, for our American friends or not European friends, it's the premier football championship in Germany.
That's right.
Correct? Yeah. And when I say football, for our American friends, I should say soccer, the other football, the European football.
The real football.
I'll leave you the responsibility of that one, but I kind of agree with you. Christian, thank you for being here. You developed a website called promptz.dev. Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, and I like the gesture you made when you said develop. It looked like I made some art, which is really cool.
Developing, for me, it's part an art and part of science.
It is. it is a lot of art. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really love. I did not expect to get one time invited to a podcast talk about this pet project. But this idea came out of a workshop actually that we had in our company. So I got the request from one of our colleagues and said, "Hey, Christian, can you help our teams in navigating this whole AI landscape around software engineering?" And the goal was to find out how can this help us in the future to be more efficient, to write more secure code, whatever it is. I said, okay, that sounds like a very structured approach. So I'm a structured person. I like this. So okay, but how do we start? Let's maybe create a workshop. So we were using at Bundesliga Amazon Code Whisperer since the beginning. So really in the early days, where it was all about just code completion, I would say.
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. Then the whole thing escalated a bit, and it turned out to be much more helpful if you have more capabilities in the IDE anyway. So we had kind of a history in using these tools, not very deeply, but the interest were there. And we said, okay, let's maybe, to get everybody on the same page, let's maybe make a workshop around Q Developer, because it evolved from Code Whisperer to Q Developer. At this stage, a lot of things happened. The interest was very high in this workshop. Our engineers were also a bit curious on the one side, but also critical on the other side, which is good. This workshop was really about having everybody on the same level of understanding and knowledge what Q Developer can do. And we had it was a standard immersion day workshop that we did with our AWS account team. So we had the script, we had this outline of things and steps that happened afterwards. So we said we are kind of flexible in what you want to see and what you want to learn. And that turned out very quickly into a very interactive experience, because our engineers in general are very senior level engineers, very deep into a tech stack, into a programming language. And for them, it was not really sophisticated enough to implement a bubble sort or a function that lists S3 buckets. So they created breakout rooms. We said, okay, let's tackle real world problems. In one breakout room, 2 or 3 engineers decided to transform a Python sample application from AWS, from the GitHub repository, into TypeScript, because TypeScript is our main language and the whole ecosystem around this. And the others did some kind of refactorings in their own code base. And I watched them working with this tool. And so, okay, they they struggle with two things. They struggle in crafting their prompts and finding out what is the best pattern, what is the best
The level of details.
level of details, choice of words, arrangements of words and sentences. And they struggle to kind of manage their prompts. So oftentimes they open up a new chat tab and say, okay, but what did I write in the first one? So they copy and paste a lot of stuff. I say, okay, that
I guess
is
it happens to everybody trying an
yeah,
AI assistant. I have a tab open with different prompts and I copy paste, rearrange them,
exactly.
compose them.
Ideally, you have a note app somewhere where you store
Yeah.
this. I said, okay, how can we help those developers in this area to manage those prompts? I said, yeah, that was the idea of promptz.dev born, in order to create this one-stop shop of community prompts, where when I do the hard work of prompt engineering for a specific task, I can submit it to promptz.dev and make it discoverable for other builders, for other engineers.
In the introduction, I compare it to GitHub for prompt. It's much more simple than GitHub, obviously, because a prompt is just a text. You don't have a project with multiple files and things like that. I don't think you have history and things like that. But basically, what it is now, it's a repository of high quality prompts that have been tested and proved to work on Amazon Q developers.
And that focus on solving some kind of a real world challenge. So when you look into the prompts, you often see typical things that we need to do in our engineering work. So automated code reviews, or it goes from very specific prompts up to creating whole applications. The quality of the output, of course, relates to the detail of the prompts somewhere, but it shows the whole spectrum of options that we have here. And whatever you use for your use case, you can search at prompts. Okay, maybe I need something for code reviews. Maybe I just want to write a unit test, whatever it is. And I see either I can one-on-one copy the prompt, or I see and adapt, okay, how did the engineer solve this problem? What kind of patterns did he use? And I continue from there. I adapt this, I change things to my unique repository or whatever.
So there are two types of prompts that we can store there: private ones that I'm the only one to see, and public ones that I want to share with the rest of the community as well. What type of feedback did you receive from early user? How much useful they found it? I think the answer is a lot, because I saw a lot of buzz on social networks about promptz.dev.
Yeah, it was kind of it was several phases of adoption, I would say. So I'm an AWS community builder, and I discussed this idea both internally with our engineer teams, but also with the community builders, and said, hey, I have this idea. Do you feel the pain? So just to get some data points on, is this a general topic? And I invited community builders to join a beta test. So before the public launch, it was a closed beta, let's say, for community builders. And I gathered feedback. So that they gave me the feedback also to have some kind of scoping of prompts, so that everything should be public. Sometimes I want to keep those things for myself, or maybe they are just in a draft stage and not really ready to be published. That shaped a lot of the initial beta roadmap. And then it took some time. So I launched this before reInvent, because I knew, or I wouldn't say not I knew, but I expected some launches around Q Developer around this. I said I definitely want to have this ready.
What a surprise.
Want to have this ready before this. And I got a lot of support from developer advocates who had talked with this and said, oh, wow, this is cool. And yeah, from that moment on, I had some, I would say, power users using the platform, contributing more and more prompts. I was doing a lot of social media marketing on LinkedIn, I would say, and sharing things and encouraging people to submit this. And yeah, I get a lot of feedback from the early users, like, okay, I would like to have a how-to section where I describe how to use the prompt. And that made me so much happy, because I said, okay, that's not only an interesting pet project for me or my teams, this seems to solve
An actual problems
an
there.
actual problem, an actual challenge that a lot of builders have.
So
Yeah.
it's an audio only podcast. We need to describe that in a way to represent that for people that don't have picture or image. But you go to www.promptz with a Z. We're going to explain the story behind the Z.
Yep.
.dev. But if I connect there, I authenticate. What do I see? How can I search for prompts? How can I make them useful for me?
Yeah, you have, when you go to promptz.dev, you come onto a landing page which has a very obvious prominent search box, and that's what you use initially to search for prompts. So you type in whatever it is, let's say CDK, and you hit enter, and you come to the browse page, see search results related to your search term. And in these search results, you can click on each prompt to go to the detailed page and see the actual prompt, and get a description, maybe get a how-to description on how to use the prompt, what kind of prerequisites it has, what kind of things you need to take into account. And you have this very big prompt section with a copy button on it. And that's all you need to do is click on the copy button, go on your IDE, and paste it into the chat, your CLI or whatever. So every prompt is also tagged. It has some kind of tags, like it describes, is this a prompt for Q developer in the IDE? Is it for the CLI or the management console? Is it for a specific activity in your software development lifecycle? Or is it an agent prompt or a general chat prompt?
There is all faceted search, as it is called, where you can browse by category, all the categories that you mentioned. Like, is it about documentation, design, deployment, for the CLI, for the IDE, and once you click on a prompt, it's not just one phrase. A prompt can be quite long with a lot of details about exactly what the developer wants, and it's easy to. There is a big copy button, so it's easy to copy paste into promptz. The project got some visibility from the service team as well, because I saw Massimo Refere, which is a director in the product management team of Amazon Q Developer, chatting about it internally, posting on social media, and he shared a couple of prompts on promptz as well. I know he's doing always the same demo at conference, and the prompts for his demo are there too. So
nice.
You were in touch with the product team?
Yeah, a lot, and I have to send a huge thank you to the product team, to the service teams, especially Massimo and also Ricardo, who gave a lot of feedback around how to make this better, how to evolve from this. I can also share with them a lot of stories from our engineer teams, and help really the Q developer team to understand better how engineers work. And that's really a cool and very helpful bi-directional communication, I would say. And that's really cool.
So I said we are going to explain the story behind promptz. Why Z? It's a small anecdote,
Yeah.
but I think it's funny to explain.
Yeah, I wanted to have something that is easily that you remind very easily. Memorable. Thank you. Exactly. I said, okay, promptz that's what it's all about. So I looked up into, is this domain available? Oh yes, it was available.
Promptz.com.
Promptz.dev. I wanted to have dev. That's what for sure. Okay, but that's for developers. And then I saw it was listed as kind of a premium domain, which would cost me 90,000 euros.
Wow.
I said, okay, that's a bit too much for a pet project.
Wow.
That's why I took one of these suggestions around, okay, what alternatives do you have? And promptz.dev was the one that cost me a fraction.
A tiny fraction of that 90,000 cost. We're talking to developers in this podcast. Can we shed the light on how you implement it? I think from an implementation point of view, it's quite simple. It's a repository of text with a couple of search functionality. Knowing you, I guess you went for the serverless options. But what are the AWS technologies that you use to develop promptz.dev?
Yeah, of course, serverless. That was a given. So yeah, I'd have to say I'm working as a solutions architect. I have an engineering background, so worked as an engineer for a long time. But I'm not really good in front end stuff. And that's so first of all, I implemented it with a lot of help with QDeveloper itself. So it was also a very good testing area for me to learn about AI assisted software engineering. And I want to have this, as this is right now a one-man show, as easy as possible, as opinionated as possible. So traditionally I would use some CDK and build all the things by myself using the power of CDK. But in this case, I used Amplify as Amplify is a bit of overloaded term, so I need to put this in the context.
Amplify?
Which
The
Amplify?
framework, the CLI, the hosting.
Yeah, in this case, all of them. But it started with
Good.
the with the framework and the integrated CLI, because I saw that there was a new generation of Amplify. It's Gen 2. I said, okay, let's give it a try. Actually, try it out, and I was very positively surprised. So, with my CDK background and being a fan of this, it was very much closer to this compared to Gen 1, which was actually a good developer experience. And I basically used the modules and the opinionated approach from Amplify in what kind of APIs to use. It's AppSync. It's AppSync
Cognito
connected with the
for user
DynamoDB.
authentication and
Exactly.
DynamoDB.
Exactly. Cognito. So far, for this, I did not recognize any major limits. I even learned a lot of building kind of production-ready solutions with Amplify and the pitfalls that you have. For example, like ensuring that you configure deletion protection for your Cognito auth pool or DynamoDB table, enabling point-in-time recoveries. So things like this that typically Amplify for me was a tool for rapid development, prototyping, doing some POCs. And here I did the test on, can I build a production-ready application with this? Yeah.
And it works.
It works.
And did you use Amazon Q developer as well?
Yeah, a lot, especially for the front-end related stuff. Because it uses Next.js as a framework. I never worked with Next.js. I'm not a front-end guy person, I would say. And with this, I asked you a lot of questions. And I also learned about different kind of patterns that work good for me, which I also wrote blog posts about in approaching more a conversation approach. So my approach in QDeveloper is getting as fast as possible into real conversation. So like I would have with a real human engineer via whatever collaboration platform you use at your companies, and not just pointing him to, okay, do this, fix this, refactor this, but giving as much as context as I can do with various techniques that you have today.
How did you implement the search? Because you mentioned DynamoDB. DynamoDB is not great for searching data, especially full text searching across the entire database, and that would be slow and super expensive. So I guess there is an open search or something next to it.
No, not yet. No? So I want to have this as cost efficient as possible. So therefore, I did not use open search, with the trade-off of limiting search capabilities, of course. So I was up to this point, I was able to build some kind of basic text searches around the description and the names.
With DynamoDB?
With DynamoDB. Okay. It's not optimal because it uses scan operations, which I know that this is something that I definitely have to refactor someday, especially the more traction promptz.dev gets the community. So this is kind of an issue flagged in my mind or on my roadmap to have the look at here. But for now, as long as I don't hit the limits, it's still cheaper as open search, and for me easier to maintain. Yeah, but that's definitely not easy to implement.
There is a super cool feature of Cognito that you configure that I really love. It's the passwordless authentication. You just enter your email, there is no password, it sends you a code, and it's 0 lines of code on your side.
Yeah, and that was right on time, because that was really a pain to configure some kind of social identity authorization. So I wanted to have at least kind of Google, as a lot of people might use it for for
GitHub
social
and Google
identity.
and yeah.
Yeah. And once Cognito launched passwordless, I said, okay, as fast as possible, I need to refactor this because it makes things so much easier. And what was really cool, it works with an existing user pool, right? When I switched to passwordless authentication, I had around about 30 users in my Cognito user pool, and I switched to passwordless, and it works seamlessly without migrating user pools. So you can simply add your Google Mail address or your whatever address you used before, and instead of signing in with the password, you get this one-time password sent. That was really cool and reduced a lot of code, a lot of complexity on my side.
A few weeks ago, there was a launch on Amazon Q Developer that allows to manage your prompt. You can save your prompts locally. You can search for your prompts as well. The prompts are located in a .amazon directory on your hard drive. How are you? And I saw a message about that yesterday that you post. How do you see the two capabilities to integrate? How the local prompt saving capability of Amazon Q and promptz can work together?
Yeah, I was as a community builder, I was very close with the service team, so they reached out to me. I think also because I built promptz.dev to talk about this. And before the official launch, I got the info that there's something about to happen in this direction. And we discussed also about how this relates to promptz.dev. And during the discussion, I said, okay, that's cool that you share this because I already had the plan to build some kind of IDE extensions so that you don't have your browser side, but I want the developer to stay in this tool as long as possible and not moving back to a website just to consume prompts. And I think both features for Q Developer, the prompts library feature and promptz.dev, go very much hand in hand. And I would love to see the integration more deeply, more natural in this case. What you can do right now is just copy paste the prompts from the website as Markdown into these folders and then reuse them. That's exactly what you can do. Or you build a script, web scraper to scrape, or fetch the data from the DynamoDB from the API. So they go very much hand in hand. Actually, that's
It would be cool to have like a, a kind of plugin structure, like a SPI, service provider API, inside Amazon Q Developer, so they can tap in different prompt repository, being local or remote like yours.
Yeah, there's actually a standard for this. So the things like Model Context Protocol, which was built by Anthropic
Yeah.
some months ago or a year ago, which goes into this direction, which is, I think, very promising to look at. I used also C-Line as an AI assistant in my IDE connected to Amazon Bedrock, and now one of our accounts. And I was very impressed of the plugin capabilities based on this MCP architecture. So I can plug in my GitHub to create issues. I can plug in my Slack, whatever, to forward messages to my team, whatever it is. So that's really powerful. And I'm really curious to see how all these AI assistants evolve in this direction. Because I think that, given my experience, it started from very opinionated AI assistants, like Q Developer is also today, and certain steps to giving engineers more control. With more control, you have the risk of more maybe things like hallucinations or inaccuracies, but it gives you more flexibility and it opens up the doors for exactly those integrations and tools.
Yeah, because the real value is when you start to integrate these tools together, as you mentioned, with Stack, with GitHub, and things like that. Just like usual, all the links to the things, the tools, service that we are talking about are in the notes of this application. You just scroll down in your podcast application and you can find all the links. I'd like to finish by zooming out, because we went down into the details of implementation, about your perspective about IA for developer. There are so many discussions right now, like developers will be replaced. Some others say no, it will increase the demand for development skills. It will change the role of developer for sure. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I have to say this. I'm definitely not. I have to say this. I'm definitely not a fan of those news like AI will replace software engineers. So that's in so many ways toxic for the whole industry, for the whole view on software development, and that's very dangerous. And what I want to emphasize always is that it's very important to face this change. So we have these new tools here, and today, right now, is the perfect time to find out how does it help us human software developers to reduce toil, to be more productive, whatever. And I consider myself also on this mission to not just focusing on coding. I mean, there are so many aspects of software engineering beyond coding where I think those AI assistants can help much better, because when you're a very experienced software engineer with a long history in whatever framework it is, I mean, I can wake you up and you say me the API of whatever function in this framework, right? You're so deep into this. You don't need help with coding, but maybe you need help in writing technical documentations or writing unit tests, refactoring stuff, whatever it is. So there are much more things beyond coding in the software development lifecycle. And today is exactly the time to figure out, where does it help? Where does it boost my productivity? Where is it maybe distracting me too much? Or where is maybe also harming my productivity? It could be also the case.
Is there also a matter of sharing realistic expectation? What I mean is that vendors, it always include, and I'm partly responsible for that as well, sometimes oversell these tools, are selling, hey, this is the next marvel of the world and it will change the way you work forever. And when we work with them on a daily basis, it's super useful. Don't take me wrong. I'm not saying it's not useful. It's useful. It helps me to be more productive. But definitively, it's not replacing me.
Yeah. And honesty and realistic expectation is everything we need in this area today, because otherwise we lose trust. Trust in either the vendor that comes with telling me, with my tool, you're 10x more productive. I don't. Why? My question would be why and how. And exactly this how is very important. I mean, how did you get to this? What have you done before to get to this productivity boost, right? You might have spent 2 weeks of prompt engineering with this. Then please be honest and say, okay, yes, you have this learning curve, so you need to invest some time. But once you had this point of having the perfect prompt, you are more productive.
And
I mean, that's honest, right? Yeah.
And promptz.dev helps you to get
Hopefully.
inspired, at least not to get your perfect prompt, but to read the prompts from others, and just like in many domains, by learning and by looking at how others are doing it. That's how I learn, and I guess many of our listeners are learning as well. Christian Bonzolet, thank you for first having developed promptz.dev, talk about it in this podcast and spend a bit of time with our listeners. You're a solution architect at the Premier League of Football in Germany, Bundesliga, and you're also an AWS community builder. I will invite you for another episode, because Bundesliga is doing tons of fascinating stuff with machine learning as well, and computer vision. I saw tons of blog posts and use case published. That's quite fascinating how machine learning can help at sport as well. Thank you, Christian, for being here. Thank you for listening to this episode until the end. See you next week in all good podcast application. But now, go build.